Chapter 10. I could not help but cry. Conclusion. By Monday, April 30th, 1945, but so apparently Adolf Hitler lay dead. For 360 miles away, Hitler reached his last stand in Munich. The boys ages 10 to 14 pushed streetcars into place, blocking the Maximilian Bridge. Some fell forced to the rifles in hand, barricade. The boys waited feverishly for the Americans, determined to keep them entering the city, whose heavy grind of the Sherman tanks and felt the vibrate. Squinting through their gun sights, Aim was the first tank to emerge, but then and then another, forming an endless line. The tank rumbled through barricade. The boy froze. He was suicide to fight. They threw down their guns and surrendered. The American soldiers took the captured boys to the Liber concentration camp, 12 miles outside Munich. Other Germans, the boys had heard horrible whispered places like Dachau. The boy entered the camp gate. They passed the electrical fence with barbed wire, the wooden barracks, the guard towers, and the within minutes, concentration camp survivors flanked the boys. The survivors looked emaciated. Striped uniforms fluttered about them. It was impossible to believe people could stood, let alone walk on it. Horrified, he and the other shrank back to the inmates. "They're going to tear us to pieces," said the boy. But never a word was uttered, never a hand raised. The Americans took the boys to a short main camp, where 50 freight cars stood. A soldier pointed to several boys and, speaking perfect German, he ordered them to open the freight car doors. Stood by, the boy lifted the metal bars and heavy doors. "The first thing that fell out was the skeleton of the woman," said the boy. The car contained badly decomposed bodies, packed so tightly they were still standing, one body supporting the next. The shit wasn't over. It stuck their red brick whose chimneys. Sickening smell filled the air. Inside, they saw the cruise oven filled with shutters of burned bodies, including bodies of several young children. "That night was the simplest one," said the boy. "The impact of what we had seen too great to immediately digest it. I could not but help but clap. Here's to digest this National Socialism. They have served a mass murderer, and in so doing had contributed to the death of millions of people." After Germany surrendered unconditionally on May 7, 1945, 40 Allied powers, Britain, France, and Soviet Union, and the United States agreed that Nazi Germany must be held accountable in human action during the war. Allied Nazi officers to trial at the International Military Tribunal in Nuremberg. Officer accused of committing war crimes. In November 1945, four-judge court began to hear evidence, which included thousands of pieces of written documentation, film, photographs, and hundreds of eyewitness testimony. Horrible charges were crimes against humanity. These crimes included torture and murder. 12 million people, 6 million Jews and 6 million non-Jews, were deemed enemies of the Reich. Other charges included the aggressive war, the murder of civilian occupied countries, the widespread slave labor, the looting occupied countries, the mistreatment, murder of prisoners and hostages, and the conspiracy to commit this crime. The Nazi leaders insisted on doing their duty and following orders. Disagreed. They ruled that moral laws came before duty any nation. Therefore, obeyed orders, no excuse. The trial lasted. At its end, judges announced the verdict. 19 of the top Nazis found guilty. 12 were condemned to death, 7 to prison terms, and 3 were acquitted. The Nazis were tried in Nuremberg. Several committed suicide, arrested or taken to trial, included Joseph Goebbels, propaganda, Heinrich Himmler, head of the SS, and Hubert Lahr, head of the Right Labor Front. Adolf Eichmann, the SS official responsible of Jews' concentration camps, escaped Argentina, but 15 years later, Israeli tracked him down, captured him, and flew Israel for trial. Guilty and hanged in 1962. Louis Nuremberg. Baldur von Schiller, the Third Reich leader, admitted, among other things, he miseducated, misled the German youth. It is my guilt which I will carry before God and the German nation. He said, it is my guilt that the German youth were sentenced to the 20 prison to Sirach's successor. And for 35,000 marks. Commander of 12 SS Division, of Americans sentenced to death in the murder of war during the Normandy campaign. Later, community life in prison reduced 14 years. What about the children, teenagers found Hitler and fought for the Nazis? Youth members were tried in Nuremberg. Court determined that the children, teenagers of the Third Reich had betrayed, deserted, and sacrificed. Although the Hitler youth were not tried in Nuremberg, some were tried by the civilian courts. Effort to ever coming to power again, Allies ordered to hold denazification trial. People convicted Artin leadership and Nazi party ran for public office. In prison, sentenced to the hard labor. Alfons Heck was ordered to the pyramid. Organizer Alphonse to restrict it. No one must hard labor. Hitler were forced to view document films. Many Hitler told themselves films were exaggerated, not invented by the Allies. Said Alphonse. Hitler used the realization were enslaved for the criminal cause came about only after many years. One American soldier person he would never shake God in his lifetime. I found out he was right, said Alphonse. Lolita Mushman was also called Adina's BDM leader. She is accused and misexecuted young people and sentenced to several years in a women's prison camp. Imprisonment, Melita rationalized. She had sacrificed and worked hard to better Germany. Her action motivated by love for people. Only years later, Melita overcome her Nazi training, realized implication of her action. So unselfish, humble, friendly, and ready to help others. People, she said. What good are kindness, self-sacrifice, energy, and sense of responsibility if they were so who once as a sister may benefit from them? Weeks of war, Henry Miloman and several others refuge in the cellar. American tanks rolled past the house, and Henry saw the immense tanks. He realized first thought how frightened the German tanks must have appeared to Russian people. That meant myself. I never look at them from this position, said Henry. Never given others. Henry surrendered to the American prisoner of war. He was sent first to the United States and then to England. 3 years later, 1948, he was released. He returned to Germany, but by then his parents were dead. Everything they owned were destroyed in the bombings. And me, it was a grief, also anger, frustration, and disappointment, said Henry. I had to come to terms all that. Devastated, Henry returned to England. Germany grew more desperate manpower during the last months of war, offered the Karlsruhe jail for the anti-Nazi leaflets. Karl would be released from the prison. Karl agreed, and he was to Czechoslovakia, where he would capture Soviet Russians and work in Siberia. The Soviet released Karl in 1949 with Hamburg in poor health. He recovered physically. He had a difficult time emotionally. Wake up at night, bathe in cold sweat, reliving over and over experience in the camp. I felt my soul had been permanently scarred. I live in fear of hurting someone around me, especially my family. One day, shortly before Christmas in 1949, Karl and his mother attended organ concert. Music Karl overcome emotion. Suddenly, sobbed. I cried for 2 hours, said Karl. In the end, I felt hope. I realized that my soul was permanently scarred after all. Germany surrendered in 1945. During the last days of the war, Fed in Auschwitz to march to a German village anymore, SS shot them in the neck. In my mama's garden, I saw 2 graves in front of the gate. They were dead all over. We had to bury them. Brad Levine, Jewish teenager, first relief factory discovered. He was also my deportation or concentration camp. Went to the hiding for more than 1 year. and living bombed out buildings. In 1944, he was captured by the Gestapo, thanks to his metalworking experience, which keys. When Zuppi saw Nago, Zuppi arrest a military hospital where he was recovering war injury. He raced to British court for clemency, but when he telephoned the shows, he learned it was too late. Sentence had already been carried out. Execution of Hans and Zuppi Shaw, other members of White Rose Resistance Group, arrested and taken into kinship detention at various lengths. One brother, Bennett, was not arrested, later killed at the Russian front. Work of the White Rose spread executions. The major worries how Germany occupied Europe. They were smuggled in prison concentration camps, borders in Switzerland. Allied planes, trams of thousands of White Rose lived over Germany. Hans and Zuppi Shaw. The story of White Rose Resistance broadcast American radio station, published in newspaper. The show. It might be well for those calling it re-education of Germany to ponder these aspects, wrote the reporter. Evidently, all minds of Germany have been put. Re-educate Germany. Doing so. More people were killed in World War II, any war in history. War left 53 million dead, mostly young men in their late early 20s. Millions more were crippled physically. Others suffer emotional combat experiences on front line or in bombed out cities. Work ended for Allied powers agree how to treat Germany. Should pay for starting the war and for causing terror to other countries. The Soviets wanted Germany higher reparation in arms and economically. Of Versailles, how its harsh policy led to World War II. Instead, the Allies decided Germany needed to be rebuilt. A democratic government and strong economy, only way to blend out among the ruins. The Soviet Union controlled East Germany, where there is still a communist government dictatorship. Zone of occupation. In West Germany, the other three Allied countries agreed. The United States will provide a massive amount of aid to reach to 1954. It provided $35 billion in aid to Europe, Italy, and West Germany. The American got busy putting the money to work to clear 与伊比罗